Good afternoon and welcome to DCR's introduction to the public convenience or necessity, or otherwise known as PCN process. My name is Jason Colleen. I'm an Assistant Executive Director with the Department of Cannabis Regulation, and I'm going to be here to walk you through this presentation today. Today's presentation will cover a general understanding of the PCN process. We'll identify the unduly concentrated community plan areas. We'll walk folks through the pre-application record process, the PCN forms, and the associated fees. We'll display the DCR PCN workflow. We'll provide folks with an anticipated processing timeline, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers. So the public convenience process is enumerated in the Los Angeles Municipal Code, whereby DCR has the authority to issue a set number of licenses for the retailer commercial cannabis activities, the type 10 or type 12, in different community plan areas. And those thresholds are set by population. Once DCR has issued a sufficient number of licenses, a community plan area is considered to be unduly concentrated, and DCR no longer has the authority to process applications for retail storefront activities in that community plan unless the applicant is able to get a PCN finding from the Los Angeles City Council. So in the 5 community plan areas that folks will have the opportunity to submit PCN requests, we have reached undue concentration, which means that DCR has issued the finite number of licenses it has authority to issue and now, because undue concentration has been triggered, any additional applications can't be processed without the corresponding PCN finding. So under LEMC section 10403, the PCN process allows prospective social equity individual applicants to request a finding from the City Council that their license would serve the public convenience or necessity, and they should be permitted to apply for a retail storefront commercial cannabis license in one of the community plan areas that are subject to a finding of undue concentration. And throughout this presentation, you'll see different links that you'll be able to click on and navigate to once we post this presentation after we do the webinar. Probably within a day or two, it'll be up on the website, so you'll be able to follow the links. Currently, we have 5 community plan areas that are unduly concentrated. There's Central City North, Harbor Gateway, Sherman Oaks Studio City, and Venice. Folks can go to the DCR licensing map, which is available on our website, and you can open up the map. And if you select the layer list, which is the little set of layers up here, you'll have the options to look at the different layers. You can toggle on the community plan area, which is the default layer that's there. And then you can identify whether or not a property is located within that community plan area by using the search functions. If you click on one of those community plan areas, it'll show you what the license capacity is for that CPA. So we had authority to issue 4 licenses before it reaches undue concentration. And you can see that DCR has issued 8 licenses. So we're well over the undue concentration level for the Venice community plan area. So even if 1 or 2 licensees fail to renew, it wouldn't cause us to fall below the undue concentration level for the Venice community plan area. Applications that are pending don't have a direct effect on undue concentration being triggered. So areas like Hollywood, DCR has more pending applications than it has authority to issue licenses for. So at some point in time, it's anticipated that we'll issue the finite number of licenses we can issue, which will then trigger undue concentration in the Hollywood community plan area. And then folks will have access to the PCN process. And again, once we have the PowerPoint posted, you'll have the ability to navigate through and get to various links, which I just got to the licensing map. Before you start your pre-application record, you'll have to make sure that you've registered for a business tax registration certificate for the entity that's going to be pursuing the PCN opportunity. You need a business tax registration certificate in order to remit fees to the city, as well as to remit taxes if you are licensed. The second thing you have to do is make sure that you have a legal business entity record for the entity that will be pursuing the pre-application review and potentially the PCN request. We've done a couple of different webinars, which are up on our website. So if you need more information about how to comply with these two requirements, you can go ahead and follow up with the Licensing 101 webinar, which is available on DCR's event page. And there's some additional links to information specific to requesting a business tax registration certificate and what the expedited process for doing that is, as well as how to create a legal business entity record. Assuming you have your BTRC and you've already created your legal business entity record, you'll be able to create a pre-application review record. So now I'm going to walk you step by step through the process. The first step, of course, is to log into the DCR licensing portal. So you'll enter your username, password, you'll complete the CAPTCHA, and then you'll sign in. Once you're logged into the system, you'll start at your homepage. Go ahead and click on the little activities icon. And then underneath activities, you can click on apply for a license. From here, you'll get to our general disclaimer screen. So please read through the disclaimers. You'll have to check the box that you have read and you have accepted the above terms. And once you've done that, you can click continue. From there, you'll actually be able to select the different type of record you're trying to create. Because you want to participate in the PCN process, you'll request a pre-application review record. And once you've selected the little cannabis business application, you can click continue. The first page of the application is going to ask whether or not you're applying for a type 10 retail storefront commercial cannabis activity in an area of undue concentration. The default answer is no. And what you'll do is you'll click yes. In order for you to be considered for the PCN process, your business premises will have to be located in one of the 5 community plan areas that are subject to a finding of undue concentration, which are Central City North, Harbor Gateway, Sherman Oaks, Studio City, and Venice. One of the new features we implemented earlier this month is giving folks the opportunity for us to start drafting the environmental analysis for an application record. The default again is no. If you click yes, if you are eligible for the PCN process and you decide to move forward, we'll give you the opportunity to pay the environmental review fee and begin the environmental review process. That won't open up to you as a PCN applicant until after we've determined that your pre-application record does comply with the zoning and distancing requirements, as well as you've actually filed your PCN request. In order for DCR to process an application, you do have to have the PCN finding from the city council. So until then, DCR doesn't have the actual authority to work on your formal application for the commercial cannabis license, which would require the environmental review. And then the last piece of information you're going to have to input is going to be your entity record ID, and that's your legal business entity record. So again, you have to have the BTRC in order to create a legal business entity record. And then you have to have filed your legal business entity record in order to submit an application for commercial cannabis activity. Once you've responded to the questions and entered your entity record ID, you can go ahead and click continue. The second page of the request is you'll enter the legal business name and, if applicable, the fictitious business name or DBA for the entity that's going to be going through the pre-application review process and potentially the PCN process. The second piece is going to be to enter your proposed business premises address. Right now, I have the address for DCR's office and put in, because it is located in the Central City Community Plan area. So once you've entered the address, you can see here in the little red box, there's a note that says address validated in the community plan area of Central City. As long as it's in one of the 5 CPAs, you'll have the opportunity to navigate beyond this field. If it's not located in a community plan area subject to a finding of undue concentration, you're going to get a different message and it won't allow you to continue beyond this page. So what I did on this page is I entered the address for Van Nuys City Hall. And as you can see by the error message, it's located in the Van Nuys Sherman Oaks community plan area, which has not reached undue concentration. So you can't start the PCN process for a proposed business premises address in an area that is not considered to be unduly concentrated. The way we set up the infrastructure here is when we call out to ZMIS to collect information, we're looking to see what community plan area that property is located in. If it doesn't get a single return or it's unable to find the address, it will allow for the request to be submitted. However, and I'll get to this later in the presentation, we will be reviewing all of these records before we issue invoices to make sure that they meet the requirements to participate in this process. So if you're able to submit something and we determine that it's not located in an area subject to a finding of undue concentration, you will not receive a PCN invoice, and the pre-application review record will be deemed ineligible because it doesn't meet the requirements to participate in this process. Once you've navigated beyond the legal entity and the address page, you'll have the opportunity to select what type of use you will be applying for. There's 3 options: adult, medical, or adult and medical. Once you've made your selection, click continue. Next, you'll be able to get into the business activity selection screen. You can see here that the first option is retail storefront. So in order to make that selection, you will have to either be a lottery winner or somebody who's applying for the PCN process. If your property is not zoned for the retail storefront activity, but it is zoned properly for the micro business retail storefront, you can select that option. When we do our land use review, depending on what the zoning is, if we have to make a change in the back office, we can go ahead and do that as part of the land use review. So for now, you can select retail storefront, or if you know the zoning only aligns with the micro business, you can make that selection. Please do not select any other activity on the screen, because the other activities are either 1, not selectable, or they're not subject to the PCN process. Because these requests can't move forward without the city council finding, if you were to select, distributor, transport only, non-volatile manufacturing, any of the manufacturing options, what would happen is if you don't get the finding and your pre-application record is deemed denied by operation of law, everything on the record is denied. So please only select the retail storefront activity if you plan on participating in the PCN process, and you can always create a different pre-application record for manufacturing, distribution, or other activities that you would like to pursue that are not subject to the PCN process. Once you've made your selection, click continue. Next, you'll have the opportunity to add your contacts for this specific record. There are 2 contact types that you have to add in order to navigate beyond this page. Those contacts are your neighborhood liaison and the person in charge for that location. So the neighborhood liaison is the individual that members of the public would be able to communicate with if they have questions or concerns about your business. The person in charge is the person that DCR will be communicating with if we need to schedule inspections, we need to come out to the location if we receive complaints about the location, or we need additional information from you. So you can either select those from your account. When you click on the select from account option, whoever's logged in is going to pull their information in. Otherwise, you would use the lookup function, and you would need the ACA reference ID for that particular contact, and then that will pull that contact into the record. Once you have both of the contact types that are mandatory, you will be allowed to navigate beyond this page. As you can see here, if you submit it without any contacts, you'll get an error message that says that you have to have the required contacts for every record are neighborhood liaison and person in charge. You can add law firms, you can add consultants, you can add security companies, you can add other folks to that particular record, but you must have at least a neighborhood liaison and person in charge in order to continue with the pre-application record process. Next, you'll get to the document upload. There are 2 documents that you'll have to upload as part of your pre-application request record. The first document is the public convenience or necessity finding request form. And then the second document is the landowner attestation for location eligibility, which is required for all pre-application requests. I'm going to focus a little bit on the 4001 PCN form because we've covered the landowner attestation form in other webinars. So the 4001 form, or the public convenience or necessity finding request, is a form that's available on DCR's website that the prospective applicant fills out. And this is something that will be transmitted to the office of the city clerk in order for them to consider your PCN request, as well as any stakeholder feedback and information that comes in once your council file has been created. For this first page, the premises location, the community plan area, the council district, that information can be found through the zoning information map access system. You'll also probably see some of that information pop up as you navigate through the pre-application record. The next is, who's going to be the contact. This information will be uploaded to the city clerk's council file index repository, so it will be publicly available. So, be careful if you are listing phone numbers. You're better off using business phone numbers as opposed to like your personal cell phone. You'll explain how the location could meet a public convenience or necessity. And if you need to, you can always go ahead and attach additional pages. You'll let us know what your total floor area is, your proposed hours of operation. Again, explain how allowing DCR to process your application and potentially issue a license would serve the public convenience or necessity. Right here, the council's adopted a resolution which articulates the different standards for making a PCN finding. So you can kind of tailor your narrative around the things that city council can consider. And again, once this is published, you'll have the ability just to click on the resolution link and it'll take you into the resolution. As part of the form, it'll talk to you about the neighborhood council, LAPD division, chamber of commerce. You'll have to identify a substance abuse intervention or prevention treatment facility that you would be reaching out to as part of the PCN process. Again, a lot of the information can be located either on the zoning information map access system or through the neighborhood info at lacity.gov website. There's the different chambers of commerce that you can find within LA. So you can click on the link to find out what the closest one is. And then you'll have to do a Google search or look for a substance abuse intervention treatment facility in that community plan area. And then of course, you'll let us know how many pages are attached, and then you'll sign and date it. Once you've uploaded the forms, you'll have the opportunity to review your pre-application request. I've highlighted the little edit buttons. There's 2 different ways that you can go back into the document or into your request before you submit it to make changes. The first one is to select the save and resume later option. So if you save and resume later, it'll create a temporary record that will be listed on your record management tab, and then it'll give you the option to resume the application. So if you go into it and you click resume, it'll give you the option to start over from the beginning or start up wherever you left off. The other option is to click on the edit button. And when you click on the edit button, it'll take you back to that page within the workflow so that you can make edits to documents, changes if you find typos or anything else you need to add additional contacts. Once you've reviewed your pre-app record for completeness, you'll just go down here, you'll read the certification that you're not omitting any information, you're not making any material, you're not submitting material misinformation to the department, et cetera. You'll click the box and you'll go ahead and click continue. As part of this process, folks are going to have to pay the $597 pre-application review fee. Once the fee is paid, we'll do the land use review. And once we've completed the land use review, we'll determine whether or not the location is eligible for further processing and can move forward into the actual PCN request process. If you are able to move into the PCN request process, there'll be a separate invoice for the $1,592 PCN fee. Once you've actually submitted your pre-application review request, you'll get a confirmation that says it's been successfully submitted. You'll see a temporary application number submitted to you. And once you pay the invoice, we'll start to do our review. And then, of course, if you're eligible, we'll move people forward into the formal PCN process at a later date. Again, the PCN filing fee is $1,592. If you do make it into the formal PCN request process and we transmit your request to the city clerk for council consideration, you will have to complete the stakeholder input request forms. You'll need to wait until your request has been assigned a council file number. Generally, the city clerk does that in a few days, but it could take up to 10 days. Based on our proposed timeline, we do want to get it to them sometime in mid-November, prior to council going out for the holiday recess and then well before the December recess. We're targeting the week of November 13th to transmit all of the PCN requests to the office of the city clerk, because the city council will be on recess that week, so they won't have any council obligations or committee obligations. So they'll have the opportunity to focus on getting the request processed, assigning council file numbers so that we can then communicate it out to the PCN requesters so that you can complete these forms and get them out to the different stakeholders as quickly as possible. For the stakeholder input request forms, you'll identify what type of stakeholder the form is being populated for. You'll enter their information, the contact person, you'll provide them with the council file number that they can upload their comments and feedback. You have a responsibility to submit these stakeholder input request forms to the different stakeholder groups. The stakeholders themselves are not obligated to submit feedback for council consideration. So the PCN requesters do have to complete these forms and get them out to the different stakeholder groups. Those stakeholders, however, are not required to submit something to your record. As part of the stakeholder request form, you will provide some basic information as it relates to the PCN request. It'll be the same information that you had on the PCN request form that was transmitted to the city clerk. And now to get into the workflow. So the pre-application record filing period is going to be open through Tuesday, August 29th at 11:59 p.m. So any pre-app records that are created over the next 2 weeks, we'll go ahead and review to determine whether or not the activity and the community plan area of the proposed business premises location complies with the requirements. On August 30th, for all of these requests, the pre-application review requests, we will issue invoices. Folks will have 30 days to pay the invoice. Their record status will be set to waiting for payment. When the invoice is paid, DCR will then start the pre-app review. And once we've determined whether or not it complies with the zoning and the distancing requirements for these PCN records, we'll determine, if a PCN is required, and then it'll get workflowed to the PCN finding required. Once we've completed processing, we will issue all of the PCN request invoices for the 1592 on the same day, so that folks have the same 30-day period to pay those fees. And then we can go ahead and once we've received the payment, we can complete our review. And then we plan to transmit all of the PCN requests to City Council for further consideration the same week. We would then, workflow it once it's been transmitted to City Council to this PCN waiting for council. So we're waiting for the council to act, and we're just waiting for their determination. The City Council can either approve or deny a PCN request within the 90-day period. And then if council takes no action within 90 days, it's deemed denied by operation of law. If a PCN finding is made, we'll go ahead and workflow the record to eligible for processing, and then you'll have the opportunity to submit your annual license application record. If council doesn't make the finding or they deny the request, then of course the record is deemed ineligible and you're not going to be able to submit an application. So this is the anticipated PCN timeline and key dates. The pre-application record filing period again is open today, and it'll be open through 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday, August 29th. We pushed the functionality to the production environment this morning. There is no benefit to folks who submitted their request at 8 a.m. or at noon or at 2 p.m. or at 4 p.m. Once the filing period closes, we will issue invoices for the records that are eligible to move forward based on the proposed business premises location being located in a community plan area subject to a finding of undue concentration. Everybody will be invoiced on August 30th. The invoice will cover the pre-application record of $597. That will be due from everyone on or before Friday, September 29th, 2023. We will complete our pre-application review for any of the records where the fees are paid. The intention is to close out that part of our process over that weekend so that on Monday, October 2nd, we can issue PCN invoices for the $1,592 for the records that are eligible to move forward with requesting a PCN finding from the City Council. And then that fee will be due on or before Wednesday, November 1st of 2023. And then from there, the intent is to complete all of the reviews for the PCN request forms, get them transmitted to the office of the city clerk on Monday, November 13th, or sometime during that week while council's on recess. And assuming we transmit everything to the city clerk on November 13th, the last day for city council to make the PCN finding would be on February 11th, 2024. So we've intentionally laid out this process so that we can move these requests forward in the process in large chunks, so that if the council does want to be briefed on the request, we can present them with information about all of the requests within a given CPA. And then, of course, the start and finish for this entire process will be the same for everybody. And then requests aren't being moved in advance of other requests so that council can see everything that's going to be before them for consideration as part of this tranche. And then, of course, the goal would then be to open up a new PCN filing period sometime in 2024. Once we've transmitted it to the Office of the City Clerk, Council has 90 days to review and take an action on the PCN request. It's a discretionary action tied to the location, the need, the surrounding uses, and whether or not a finding of public convenience or necessity could be made. Again, the reasons that are listed in the resolution are the things that Council can make findings on. And then Council has 90 days to adopt a PCN finding. If a finding has not been made by the 90th day, on the 91st day, those records will be deemed denied by operation of law, and there is no appeal period for this process. You will be able to submit a new PCN request at a future filing date, but there is no appeal period if the PCN finding is not made by the City Council. And with that, we can hop into the question and answer section.
Hi, Jason. Our first question comes from several individuals, John M., Stephen R., Cordell B., and Narby H. How long will the PCN review process take from start to finish?
Start to finish, it takes about 6 months for the entire process to play out.
Okay, the next question from John M. Will there be any caps on the number of PCN licenses?
There's no hard caps for the PCN process. It's all subject to Council's ability to make a public convenience or necessity finding for that given community plan area. Council's not limited to the number they can make. It's really going to be based on the economics and the reasons why they're allowed to make those PCN findings. And if they have a sufficient number of requests where those findings could be made, they could approve all of them if they wanted to.
Our next question comes from Stephen R. and Samuel N. How do you determine whether a community plan area is unduly concentrated, and what areas can I apply?
So within the municipal code, the definition of undue concentration allows the DCR to issue 1 license for every 10,000 residents in a community plan area. Once DCR has issued that number of licenses in a community plan area, it's considered unduly concentrated. And then only Council has, through the PCN process, the ability to authorize DCR to process more applications. Currently, there are 5 community plan areas that are unduly concentrated: Central City North, Harbor Gateway, Sherman Oaks, and Venice.
Okay, our next question is from Sunshine P. Can an applicant for a retail location be an existing social equity license holder?
Yes, subject to the limit of 3 retail licenses per person that's articulated in the code.
Our next question also comes from Sunshine P. I don't know the context, but I'll see if you can figure that out, Jason. The question is, are these licenses the same as the lottery license holders?
No. So these are different license opportunities. So the folks that were selected to participate in phase 3 retail round 2 through the lottery process, that group of 100 have the opportunity to submit the retail storefront application in a community plan area that has not reached undue concentration. So those are folks that are competing for licenses that DCR can process their application and issue a license for. The public convenience or necessity process is the opposite of that. That gives social equity applicants, you don't have to be selected through the lottery. You just have to be associated with a social equity applicant, which is an entity or a sole proprietor that has been verified to participate as a social equity applicant and apply for the retail storefront license type. And that's to give folks the opportunity to submit their PCN request in an area that has become undue concentrated and is no longer eligible for lottery winners or others to apply in.
Thank you, Jason. Our next question comes from Michael G. Can this PCN process apply to applicants who want to convert their delivery license to a storefront license?
Not in the way the question is written. So if you've already submitted an application for the non-storefront delivery activity, or you've been issued a delivery license, that's a completely separate record. Here, you're applying for the retail storefront, and DCR doesn't even have the authority to accept and process your application without that PCN finding. So if you are successful in getting the PCN finding, you ultimately get a storefront license. You can choose not to renew your delivery license, but they're two different records, two different approval processes. So there's no way to convert a delivery license into a retail storefront license.
Okay. Michael G asks, what is the burden of proof of public convenience or necessity?
The council adopted a resolution which lists various reasons why they can make a public convenience or necessity finding. And the ability to make the finding is going to vary community plan area by community plan area, and it's going to be based on the different geographic and economic principles within that geographic area. So there's not, other than the reasons listed in the resolution for how these findings could be made and what they can be made for, there's not a hard and a fast rule for what this burden of proof is going to be, because it's going to vary community plan area to community plan area, and then it's going to vary geographically within those community plan areas based on economic and other factors that are in and around the proposed business premises location.
Thank you. Our next question from Alfred A. Do we have to apply at the original address we initially applied in?
No, this is a completely separate process.
Okay. Moving on, Jermaine W. How much would the fees be for first-time applicants?
Well, the pre-application review fee is the $597. If the proposed location is properly zoned and distanced from sensitive uses, you'd have the opportunity to choose to submit a PCN request. The fee for submitting the PCN request is $1,592. And then if council makes the PCN finding, you would have the opportunity to file an annual license application. Initially, it's going to be the $597 to do the pre-app review. If you clear that hurdle, it'll be the $1,592 to do the PCN finding. And then from there, it's going to be the annual license application fees, the equity share review, making sure that the legal business entity record is fully vetted. So there'll be thousands of dollars in additional fees on top of that if you get to submit an application.
Our next question comes from Yonkyu Y. I have a great place to open a retail store. Is it possible to apply for retail?
Today's webinar is specifically about the public convenience or necessity application process. If your proposed location is in a community plan area subject to a finding of undue concentration and you're a social equity applicant, you would have the opportunity to submit a pre-application record and go from there.
Thank you. Silva K asks, how can I get help with the application process?
So The Dr. Brown and the social equity team have put together a number of resources and online courses that are available to all social equity applicants. They also have the ability to refer you for one-on-one coaching. You can reach out to the social equity team through dcrsep.org for additional information. And then, of course, as a social equity applicant, you would have access to the learning management system. And there's a lot of information materials and other stuff on there. And then, of course, the DCR website has information about all the forums and links to, prior webinars.
Thank you, Jason. Our next question comes from Cordell B. Is this for the city of Los Angeles only? Can we apply for the county?
This process is only for business premises locations that fall within the city of Los Angeles's unduly concentrated community plan areas.
Our next question comes from a few individuals, Cordell B, Tamika L, and Kevin B. Do we already have to have a location, or will we be given time to find a location?
A public convenience or necessity process is site specific. So you will have to propose a business premises location. However, as part of the pre-application review process, you just have to have the landowner attestation. You don't have to demonstrate proof of site control.
Okay, the next question from Sarman H. I am pre-approved social equity applicant and was wondering if I will be permitted to apply for the retail coming up on August 15th.
Social equity applicants are able to participate in the public convenience or necessity process by starting the pre-application review record. So just make sure that you have registered for your ABTRC, you've created your legal business entity record, and you'll have the pieces necessary to at least create your pre-application review record. And then we'll vet that the location is in a community plan area subject to a finding of undue concentration, and that the applicant entity at least has some kind of linkage to a verified social equity individual applicant in order to move forward.
Our next question comes from Sue Y. Are you guaranteed a license if you have a place? If so, when would I get my license?
Licenses are not guaranteed. And getting a public convenience or necessity finding from the city council, which would allow you to submit an application, is not guaranteed. So there is no guarantee within our process.
Ingrid M asks, what kinds of things would preclude you from receiving a PCN?
I think it's kind of the opposite of how the question was framed. The resolution council adopted creates a finite number of reasons why they can make a public convenience or necessity finding. And if it's not something that's clearly articulated in the reasons in the resolution, and there's not enough evidence, there's not evidence or not sufficient evidence on the public record to support making the PCN finding request, a finding could not be made.
Our next question from Anahi T. How are community plans created and are they changed periodically?
Without getting too technical, within the city's general plan, the city has been subdivided into 35 community plan areas, which are smaller geographic areas. That's all administered by the Department of City Planning. The zoning, the uses, the geography, DCR has no input on. Again, that's run through the Department of City Planning, their commissions, and the City Council. And the community plan areas have been in effect the way they are since DCR was created back in 2017. And other than, community plan area updates that have been changing the uses and the zoning within those areas. To my knowledge, the geographies have not been amended since DCR was created. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
the community plan areas are created as a function of the city's general plan. They are changed periodically. The Department of City Planning is the lead agency for updates to the community plans. And if you go to City Planning's website, they do have a calendar on where they're actually working on updating community plan areas. That was it.
Thanks, Jason. Sorry to cut you off. We have a follow-up question from Anahi T. Can a round 1 SEIA apply for PCN, or is it just round 2 verified?
Good questions. So if you were verified based on the 2019 or the 2022 criteria, you can participate in this process. For folks that were verified in 2019, the city no longer accepts tier 1, tier 2 applications. So in order to comply with 10420 and the equity share requirements, one or more verified social equity individual applicants will have to have at least 51% of the equity in the applicant entity. So the individuals can be verified in 2019 or 2022. And then the social equity applicant, which is the entity applying for the license, has to be made up, has to have at least 51% of the equity owned by verified social equity individual applicants, which can be from 2019, 2022, or any combination of the two.
Thank you, Jason. This next question comes again from several individuals. Rahim G, Rachel W, Luis R, Reza S, and Anthony W. Is the PCN application process open to anyone or only social equity applicants?
So at this time, the PCN process would only be open to verified social equity individual applicants, because the municipal code limits who can apply for the retail storefront activity to social equity individual applicants through January 1st of 2025.
Thank you, Jason. Our next question from Cordell B. Is San Pedro considered part of the city of Los Angeles?
San Pedro is within the city of Los Angeles. That community plan area has not reached undue concentration.
And then our next question from Rahim G. Can an existing type 9 operator apply for PCN at the same location if it meets all requirements?
Yes, provided that the existing business premises location is in a community plan area subject to a finding of undue concentration.
Narbe H asks, how far does a PCN dispensary have to be away from an existing dispensary?
It's the same distancing requirements, 700 feet from all sensitive uses, as well as any other commercial cannabis business with on-site retail sales.
And our next question from Sebastian M. Again, this has to do with social equity. If an applicant was verified in 2019, do they need to be verified again under the new verification for PCN process?
They do not have to be verified again for the PCN process. SEI is verified in 2019 or 2022, may participate and have equity in the applicant entity applying for the finding. And then as long as one or more SEIAs have an aggregate equity stake of 51% or more in the applicant entity, you would be able to comply with the requirements of 10420.
Thank you. A follow-up question from Sebastian M. Applicants who are granted a license in the PCN process, can they relocate to another community plan area, or do they have to stay in their current CPA?
So, I mean, there's a couple of caveats. So the first thing is it's got granted a license. So generally, once a license has been issued, they're just subject to the rules other licensees are applicable to. So technically, yes, a business granted a retail storefront license could opt to relocate to another community plan area that has not reached undue concentration. For this group of folks, folks are going to be, if they get their PCN finding, they're going to be submitting annual license applications, and they're going to have to navigate through the annual license application process. And for the retail storefront activity, that includes community meetings, making a recommendation, and a public hearing by the Cannabis Regulation Commission. So this is really not like a mechanism to kind of apply and then jump to a different community plan area that hasn't reached undue concentration, because the PCN finding itself is site specific. So even if your application was deemed abandoned, you're only going to be able to reapply at the same location. You're not going to be able to reapply somewhere else in the city. So if you see it through to annual licensure and you've gone through your community meeting, your public hearing processes, you would be able to submit a relocation request to move it to a different community plan area. But that would be a long ways down the road.
Thank you, Jason. The next question is from Jerome D. Is there any additional community plan areas new to PCN application? If so, what areas are there?
No, there's no new community plan areas. These are all community plan areas that were unduly concentrated due to phase one and the existing medical marijuana dispensaries. It has not changed since 2019. We have received a lot more applications, and there's a number of community plan areas where DCR has more pending applications than it has authority to issue licenses for. But at this time, no new community plan areas have reached undue concentration.
Our next question comes from Jerome D. and Christina L. The PCN application window is open for a very short period of time. Will there be another PCN process since it's a short time to find a property?
It's anticipated that the process will be reopened for a limited period in 2024. Really, and as I've said throughout the webinar, soup to nuts, the PCN process takes about 6 months to administer. So at most, DCR could open it up about twice a year in order to start to finish, get things before the city council and make sure everything is properly packaged. At some point in the future, as more community plan areas reach undue concentration, we could look at different filing windows for different CPAs, but we're really not there yet, either as a city or as a department.
Our next question comes from S. Lubell. Can an EMMD or existing medical marijuana dispensary apply under the PCN process and maintain their EMMD status?
The existing medical marijuana dispensary status really has no bearing on DCR anymore, other than for the phase one, the applications and licenses issued under the old 10407. what matters, at least right now for the PCN process, is that the applicant is a social equity applicant and they're going to be able to meet the requirements of 10420. And of course, the phase one businesses, even if they were owned by verified social equity individual applicants, aren't labeled as social equity applicants. So you could have a phase one entity that has not reached the 3 license threshold that has ownership that would meet the social equity applicant requirements. And if they do, the EMMD could apply under the PCN process. And again, the designation for EMMD really only applied to the phase one records. So if they had a phase one record, that wouldn't change that. But for any new records, that EMMD status isn't what's important to the department. What's important is whether or not you can meet the requirements to be a social equity applicant.
Our next question comes from Rafi S. and Emily H. Does the PCN also include cultivation licenses?
Not at this time. The resolution council adopted was specifically focused on the retail storefront activity. So until the resolution is amended to allow for findings to be made for cultivation, it wouldn't be beneficial to administer a PCN process for cultivation.
Our next question from Lily J. PCN is only required for heavily concentrated areas, meaning you are only accepting applicants in those areas, correct? And then the follow-up. So if the applicant is not applying within a heavily concentrated area where the PCN would apply, this opening for application does not apply.
The PCN process is only for business premises located in community plan areas subject to a finding of undue concentration. So if your proposed business premises is not in one of those 5 community plan areas, you are not eligible to participate in the PCN process.
Jason, I wanted to check on your time availability. It's 2:28 at the moment.
I do have another meeting after this. I can probably go for another 5.
Okay.
And if the meeting starts late, at max, like 10 minutes.
Okay. Let me move on quickly. Wes A asks, is this application considered provisional so that businesses can start immediately?
So the answer to that question is no. The provisional license process is state nomenclature, and the state sunset their provisional application process. And the last date for the state to issue new provisional licenses was June 30th, 2023. So anybody who moves forward in this process should assume that they're going to be required to navigate through the local annual license application and state annual license application processes.
Thank you, Jason. Our next question from Anahi. With a small grace period for PCN, what is the timeline for getting a BTRC? Is there a way to expedite the BTRC request?
I would refer you to the DCR website. So you can complete the BTRC application and email it to DCR licensing. And then we forward the request to the Office of Finance. And, we do ask for them to expedite the creation of the BTRCs. But if you wait till the end of the filing window to try to request your BTRC, it's not going to be issued in sufficient time for you to create your legal business entity record in order for you to create your pre-application review record. So you need to have those 2 things done early so you can submit the pre-app record.
Jesse F asks, can I apply as a sole proprietor to skip the LBER process and add my entity after the pre-app review?
No. All business entities, whether it's a sole proprietorship, an LLC, or a corporation, are now required to have a legal business entity record. So as a sole proprietor, you could create a legal business entity record as a sole proprietorship, linking your Excella reference ID to it and your individual sole proprietor BTRC, but you will have to have an ELBR record.
Our next question from Luis R. Is Sun Valley unduly concentrated?
At this time, Sun Valley, the Tuna Canyon is not considered unduly concentrated. As part of phase one, we issued a sufficient number of licenses, but it was right at the cap. And one of those businesses either failed to timely renew their license or they relocated out of that community plan area. So it's since fallen back below the threshold for it to be considered unduly concentrated.
Thank you, Jason. Here's a follow-up or a question from JR. Will there be another PCN process after the current one? If so, would it be 2023 or 2024?
This iteration of the PCN process won't be completed until 2024. So the next time we open the process would be probably in 2024.
A question from Rafi S. Can a social equity applicant essentially lock themselves into an area before it reaches undue concentration, then can apply for a retail storefront when available? Or is this for current license holders wanting to move into another CPA? Please help clarify.
The public convenience for necessity process is for social equity applicants looking to pursue a retail storefront license in an area that's unduly concentrated. So if you're an existing applicant or a license holder in an area, this isn't the process to relocate or modify your existing record. This is for folks that are looking to apply for a new license in one of these 5 community plan areas.
And I believe this might be our final question from Rahim G. Is it first come, first serve for retails within 700 feet of each other? What signifies who's first, pre-application or complete PCN?
None of the above. So businesses can't plant their flag until they've actually submitted an application, paid their application fee, and their application has been deemed filed. So folks through this process, for the pre-app, we're looking at zoning and distancing from sensitive uses. Businesses with on-site sales are not considered a sensitive use. And then if it's in an area of undue concentration, you have to get your PCN finding before DCR can even accept your application. So this process is kind of designed so that council can look at all of these requests and the factors, and then they can possibly make a determination. And then after the PCN findings are made, then and only then would folks have the opportunity to submit an application. And again, the submission of the application, the payment of the fees, and it being deemed filed is what allows you to plant your flag. So nothing that's been discussed today is going to allow you to create a buffer.
Thank you so much, Jason. I think we have finished the questions in the doc.
Thanks, Gidget. I really appreciate it.
You're
and
welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Just a quick reminder, we are hosting our monthly question and answer virtual lunch tomorrow at noon. So if you haven't already, feel free to RSVP. You can submit whatever kinds of questions. They could be PCN related, they could be non-PCN related. And you can visit the DCR events section on the website for more information. And with that, we're done. So thank you, everybody, for participating today. And I look forward to talking to folks tomorrow. Goodbye.